So we're about to read a really crazy letter that got filed with a court last week. But it's one thing to read a crazy letter that a party filed with the court. It's another thing to understand the vast lawsuit machine that was behind Malibu Media over the past 10 years that accumulated 8,900 federal lawsuits against internet subscribers who were accused of downloading adult films through BitTorrent without paying for them. This is a really controversial issue. I've been practicing in this area of BitTorrent piracy defense for my whole career, representing thousands of defendants and consulting with thousands more. The problem that I have with these cases is there's more than one person who uses an internet connection. The average household size in the US is 2.5 people, so there is some low percentage chance that an infringer would always be the subscriber. But that didn't stop Malibu Media and Colette Pelletier and Brigham Field as adult entertainers from capitalizing on the state of US copyright law and making millions of dollars in the process. But in the last few years, you've seen me cover the downfall of Malibu Media. Other plaintiffs have risen up into their place. I'm in no danger of losing my job due to a lack of lawsuits over internet piracy. But Malibu Media was the king of these sorts of lawsuits, and because of mismanagement, because of failure to pay their attorneys, and because of problems with 3 of their law firms, maybe even a 4th, their lawsuit engine ran out of steam. And the latest case that I've been covering is the case of William Mullins. Malibu Media brought an action against William Mullins for this kind of BitTorrent copyright infringement. Mullins moved to dismiss Malibu's claim and filed a declaratory judgment counterclaim. Instead of fighting the lawsuit, Malibu voluntarily dismissed its case with prejudice, and the counterclaim was dismissed as moot. But when you dismiss with prejudice, there can also be a shifting of the fees and costs in a lawsuit. And so the judge granted those fees and costs starting at about $48,000. But then Malibu repeatedly refused to cooperate with the payment of that judgment, first by ignoring Mullins' demand for payment. Then, when Mullins obtained court's permission to discover assets, Colette Pelletier tried to dodge the judgment while appearing like she was cooperating with the asset investigation. However, she was actively undermining that investigation by not providing any documents, by diverting Malibu Media's assets to her husband, Brigham Field, and his business, Zeo Digital. Mullins uncovered the asset diversion via an ex parte motion and obtained a restraining order to Epoch.com, a payment processor, who then restrained funds, and the $48,000 judgment turned into a $108,000 judgment. And throughout 2021, Mullins and his attorneys were collecting from Epoch all of the restrained funds, basically taking all of Malibu Media's money, much to the chagrin of Pelletier, who was very upset that she could not hire an attorney. The court would not let her hire an attorney, she would say. But what really happened was she couldn't get an attorney to represent her, and she didn't understand how to ask the court for permission, for the release of funds to obtain an attorney to defend the LLC. When you have an LLC or a company, the owner of the company doesn't represent the company. That's not pro se. A company can't represent itself. There's no pro se for corporations. So what happens is you have to get an attorney that represents the company and another attorney that represents the individual. So Colette would get an attorney, or maybe Colette and Brigham Field would both get an attorney, and the company would get a separate attorney. She didn't seem to understand that, and several times appeared for a hearing in a panic, as I've covered in previous videos, trying to beg and plead with the judge to let her have an attorney when the judge told her she can have an attorney. She just has to make a proper motion which doesn't even have to be perfectly worded or something like that. She just has to make an official motion to have some funds released to pay the attorney. But that never happened. Instead, she would just kind of ramble on and on, complaining about what was happening to her, as if she was the victim, as if her lawsuit going against these potentially innocent subscribers, I believe William Mullins is an innocent subscriber, that somehow makes Colette the victim when those subscribers defend themselves and win. Well, now Colette has filed the craziest letter that I thought I could never see from Malibu Media on the docket. Let's take a look at this. I've redacted out the email addresses, but I've left everything else in. This was a March 28th email that was sent to the court by Brigham Field on behalf of Colette Pelletier, and it says, "To all involved in this judicial matter, per local rule 78.5, to inquire as to the status of a pending motion." There are no pending motions in this case. "No offense will be taken by the court to such an inquiry or notice." This is starting to sound an awful lot like sovereign citizen territory. "We are inquiring as individuals and will request leave to intervene to stop the blatant conspiracy to defraud and divert Brigham's income to the Peacock Law Firm." Peacock Law Firm was for William Mullins. "Mullins and all original attorneys in this case will receive notice when we have time and ability to retain counsel per this court's failure to remove the outrageous TRO." She's talking about the asset restraining orders. "A federal judge should not ever be the cause of unjust enrichment. The most recent, I don't know what to call it, the scam to have $58,000 paid to the Peacock firm when we offered to pay the attorney's fees, which were never due to begin with. This case is a perfect example of abuse of process, denial of due process, violation of civil and constitutional rights." There's no violation of her rights. All of these asset restraining orders, all of this court activity in the past year, collecting money and all that, there were hearings, public hearings. I attended some of those hearings. You could have attended those hearings. The judge put all of this on the record, and you can go to the record and see a lack of Colette hiring an attorney for the company or putting something on the docket on behalf of the company. The judge ordered Colette to stop trying to represent the company, that she's not allowed to represent the company. They have to have their own attorney. So Malibu Media LLC has to have its own attorney. So that's what she's upset about here, is that she doesn't understand, hasn't been able to wrap her head around that these entities are separate entities and that she has to hire an attorney for the LLC. And if the attorney won't work for free, then she has to either pay them out of pocket or she has to ask the court to release some of these funds that are reserved for William Mullins so that she can hire an attorney. That's a normal thing, and she hasn't done that. Please accept this as notice from Malibu, myself as an individual, Brigham Field as an individual who is the contract owner with Epoch, a payment processor. Hat has collected payment on behalf of Brigham and failed to provide a 1099, nor pay the funds they collect on copyrighted material owned by Brigham, myself, and Malibu Media. She doesn't seem to get the difference between Malibu Media LLC and herself as an individual. She keeps mixing them up. And I kind of get what she's saying about a 1099. Normally, if you process over a certain amount of funds or if you process over a certain number of transactions, then the payment processor will issue a 1099-K, which means they reported that status, they reported that income and transactions to the IRS, and so you better pay your taxes because you know that's coming. Now, you need to pay your taxes no matter what, but the 1099 tells you that there's an official record of this, and I guess she doesn't have her 1099 yet. That's fine. Okay, she's got a dispute with Epoch. Please send the 1099. But this isn't that case. This is Malibu Media versus William Mullins, and she's in the wrong court for that. She's in the wrong Our access to Epoch's reports has been cut off. This notice is our intent to object to this blatant criminal misuse of the federal justice system and to file a civil and criminal complaint for conspiring to abuse process for unjust enrichment, not limited to this in any way. Criminal conversion, actions under color of law, abusing the law as a seated judge, and Stewart as a longtime employee of the Illinois Department of Justice. I don't know if Stewart, who is Mullins' collections attorney, actually still works for the DOJ, or if he ever worked for the DOJ, but he's not working in his capacity for the DOJ as Williams' private attorney trying to collect Malibu's, trying to collect the judgment against Malibu Media. If she wants to file a civil or criminal complaint, she can certainly do that. This letter doesn't have any of that effect. So I'm really kind of wondering what's going on in Pellissier's brain that she's not understanding what she has to do here, how a complaint gets filed. This is a person who allegedly made $20+ million a year off of this copyright trolling scheme. Our intent to file a case with the correct agencies for conversion, conspiracy to commit fraud, civil conspiracy, and civil/criminal RICO involving a federal judge. The same judge that Mr. Joseph Stewart worked at the DOJ of Illinois Collections Department with. Does the Department of Justice have a collections department? I don't know. I don't think that's how this works. At one point, because my production team was adding to Zoe's production of the multiple websites that Epoch processes payments for Brigham, Malibu was added to Brigham's master contract. These websites have nothing to do with XArt nor Malibu copyrights. It just seemed really convenient that the moment that Stewart and Mullins were about to collect money from Malibu through Epoch, Malibu switched to using Brigham Field's Epoch account instead of Malibu's Epoch account. It was just really convenient timing. Is that what she's trying to say here? And because of your harassment and blatant abuse of the judicial system, with Judge Durkin actively and participating, and Epoch actively, unjustly enriching themselves across state lines, Epoch would have no reason to treat Brigham, a client since 2009, so abominably, if they were not gaining something or had been threatened in some way. Yeah, Colette, you're the one who threatened them. You filed a lawsuit against William Mullins. It turned out William Mullins was not the infringer. You dismissed the lawsuit with prejudice, and then you had to pay for it. You made millions and millions of dollars. Why in the world are you so upset that you lost $108,000? Is it maybe because you don't have $108,000 left over from all of the partying and all of the travel and owning a Malibu beach house? And I believe there was a Mercedes or two in there. I think there was a Ferrari. There might have been another car or two in there. My inside sources tell me that at one point her bills were easily $300,000 a month for all of this. Maybe even more, but that's just what she allegedly bragged about to a witness that I spoke to. I have the entire docket, all 3 dockets from Malibu versus IP. I have no idea what Malibu versus IP is. And Malibu versus Mullins, misspelled. And the new docket that you unilaterally created to further your extortion efforts. I have all the transcripts, which are being examined by multiple attorneys, none of whom would enter their appearance and ask to be paid in the Mullins matter, after the court repeatedly told you that you could do that. That specialize in this kind of fraud and extortion, that which fights against of abuse of the federal justice system. This is your last chance to refund the stolen approximately $110,000 and the emotional damages that we have suffered, conservatively $50,000 a month since August 2021 for 7 months. This would be $360,000, less than Epoch has remitted in the same period of time in most years. In addition, intentional infliction of emotional distress and substantial defamation. Those are all great conclusions. there's got to be like a case. You got to make a complaint. You have to file a complaint with federal court, a short, plain statement of the facts, a statement about the correct jurisdiction, a claim for relief, connecting all these things together so the court can actually understand and the defendant can be on notice of what you're accusing them of. This is just an insane rant. This is what is left of this person's brain. I don't understand how you could fall so far. For instance, sending letters, emails to all of our contractors, attorneys, associates, stating that I am in criminal contempt, which I have never been, that I am not paying debtors, all of which are nothing more than lies meant to defame. Contacting about 20 contractors of over 10 years and informing them that they will be in criminal contempt of court if they accept any funds from Brig, myself, Zoe, Malibu, or any other entity on our behalf. I mean, reading into this, I think she's talking about fraudulent transfers. If she tries to avoid paying a judgment after the judge has issued a asset seizure order, the asset restraining order, the TRO that she's talking about, once the judge issued that order, which only happened after a series of hearings on why she hadn't paid the judgment, if she tries to transfer funds so in order to hide those funds, let me give you $50,000 or $100,000, you hold on to it for a little while, and then later on you give me back all or part of that so that I can hide it from the court. That's a fraudulent transfer. That's criminal fraud. That might be what she's talking about. This is all possibly criminal, she says. Yes, it would have been criminal for her to attempt to hide assets. And remember, she did attempt to hide assets. The court confirmed that she attempted to hide assets by switching the Epoch account to Brigham Field's Zoe digital account. Further, when partnering with Semler-Bardo to list more falsehoods, it would be prudent to do a background check. I honestly have no idea who Semler/Bardo is. See amicus brief in support of the California Bankers Association attached. Semler sued Wells Fargo for violations of the UNRRA Act. He, as a convicted felon, yet felt he should not be denied a loan by Wells Fargo because of this. They explain why they are denying to even associate with him. This is one of over 1,000 court filings by this vexatious litigant. I have no idea what she's talking about. Semler doesn't... Let me see if Semler appears on the docket anywhere. Semler does not appear on the docket anywhere. We are pursuing to have him labeled vexatious. We will pursue to have you disbarred and Judge Durkin examined by oversight based on his body of work and how we were denied counsel or breach a draconian TRO. She can disagree with the TRO all she wants, but she didn't participate in the paying of the judgment, and so the judgment was attached to Malibu Media LLC assets. Those assets include the payments to Epoch, and so the judge issued a temporary restraining order to collect that money for the defendant. The defendant prevailed, and they just collected their money. And there was no meaningful opposition from Malibu in the form of a request to have certain funds freed up for their operations or anything. So William Mullins, and his attorneys were able to collect all of that money. Hopefully this is the last time I have to interact with you personally. We are also aware of your defamation efforts online. Epoch, feel free to respond and explain your actions and send Brigham's past due 1099K. It was all just a customer service email. This is just a customer service email to Epoch. All govern yourself accordingly, Colette and Brigham. And this is apparently in response to a message from Joseph Stewart, who's William Mullins' collections attorney, asking them to pay the remaining judgment or they will pursue what I think is the last $17,000 of the judgment. Everything has been paid except for $17,635.04. It says, please be advised that pursuant to the district court's third turnover order, my firm has received a check from Epoch for about $42,000. Accordingly, the $59,000 judgment for attorney's fees now has a balance of $17,635. Yeah. The district court entered the November 29th judgment against Malibu Media, Zoe Digital, and Colette jointly and severally. The time to seek reconsideration or appeal of that judgment has long since passed. Yeah, if she disagreed on some legal basis, then you file the right thing at the right time. Since she didn't, that time has passed. As you should know, the terms of an existing asset restraining order and associated turnover order remain in place, both prohibiting the transfer of XArt proceeds and requiring Zoe Digital and Malibu to turn over assets to satisfy the court judgment. I write in hopes that both you and your respective companies wish to get on with business and to be free of further disruptions and further litigation. Accordingly, I'm requesting you to pay the balance. Only by satisfying the judgment will you avoid further litigation and the attendant business disruption. Please deal with this matter as soon as possible. Joseph Stewart, Peacock Law Group. Which part of that sounded more sane? I think it was the Joseph Stewart polite request for her to pay the judgment and get on with things. Unfortunately, something is terribly, terribly wrong with Colette Pelissier. She has fallen quite far from when I met her 10 years ago in court when I was defending one of the first defendants in the first trial in Malibu Media's copyright trolling scheme. So I'm glad to see that she's having difficulty keeping that business going, because that was an illegitimate and immoral way to run a business. The courts allowed it, so I can't disagree with it further there, but it couldn't be happening to a nicer person. Let me know what you think of that in the comments below. I hope you found it as entertaining as I did. One of these days, I hope it will be the last time we hear about Malibu Media. Thanks for watching! Special thanks to my top supporters in April: John Steele, Eevi, Spirit Bear, Benjamin Hitov, Ugly Grill, Torpedan, Gutbrodj, ShadowTycho, Earthbound Star, PureMagma, Eric Tams, TechTechPotato, The Blood-Soaked Survivors, Wyatt Calandro, and King Aries. You can support Lawful Masses on patreon.com/ljfrench, sponsors.com/law, through YouTube memberships, and through Floatplane subscriptions. Join me for our weekly live production stream on twitch.tv/lawfulmasses on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern US time. I hope everyone has a great week. I love you all. Bye.